Welcome to the Reform Club. This is where, in 1827, Phileas Fogg set off on his trip around the world in 80 days. I'm about to set off on my trip around the poles in 80 hours, covering as many of the big political battlegrounds as I possibly can ahead of those elections on May the 7th, and also taking in as many modes of transport as I possibly can on Thursday. That's when I would have completed around the poles in 80 hours.
I've just got to Pall Mall, which is where the Reform Club is, and I could see my mode of transport. There it is, look.
To Paddington! And the reason I wanted to go across the country to do this, rather than sort of just sitting in Westminster and doing it, is because the picture is very different in different parts of the country, where you've got not one or two parties going head to head, and who's up and who's down is pretty uniform. But you've got 3, 4, 5, 6 across the country, sort of 7 parties really in contention for taking control. But we are in the council area of Westminster. For years it had been run by the Conservatives, but in 2022 the Labour Party took control of it. There's a feeling among some Conservatives I've spoken to that taking that back will be a feather in the cap for Kemi Badenoch, and if they don't, it might reopen the sort of questions that there had been sort of this time last year as to whether or not she was the right person for the job. But London is interesting because over in the sort of I'd say the trendy London eastern area of the capital is where the Greens are hoping to make gains. There's a big arc which extends from sort of Camden and Islington in the north, round through Hackney and then to Southwark and Lewisham in the south. So Labour hoping to make gains there, and then you go further out, particularly further out to the east, where Reform UK have designs on places like Bromley. So I've arrived at Cardiff Station, and now I'm confronted with a bike. Off we go. And here we are at the statue of Aneurin Bevan. Nye Bevan, the founder of the National Health Service.
The principles of democratic socialism have not been extinguished by a temporary defeat at the hands of the Tories a few weeks ago.
It was actually seeing local people paying into the Tredegar Miners Association, people literally paying in money to help look after each other. It gave them the inspiration for the National Health Service. When Labour came in after the Second World War in the Attlee government, he made Bevan the Minister for Health and Housing. He thought the two things needed to go together to improve the health of the nation. And against stiff opposition from doctors, yes, from opposition parties, but within Labour too, he formed the NHS as we know it today, free at the point of use, paid for out of general taxation, and really secured his place in political history, not just Labour Party history, which is why he's got his statue right here in the centre of Tow. And yet, the big conversation we're having about Labour politics in Wales right now is the polls suggest that century really of dominance over the past 100 years or so could be, maybe, might be coming to an end, with Reform and Plaid Cymru on the rise. I can't help thinking, standing here, I wonder what Nye Bevan would have made of that. Right, Lucy, let's do some running and chatting as we go. Oh, you see, this is when I do feel like a right wally in my top hat. Welcome to Birmingham, Britain's second city, although not according to a recent poll which suggested more people think actually it might be Manchester, but I won't mention that while I'm here. Labour have dominated in the city for years, but after the council nearly went bankrupt and then they've had the bin strike, voters are looking in lots of different directions, particularly to the left. Independents could play a big part here, and then the wider West Midlands, Reform looking to make gains too. So again, it's something we're really going to watch when it comes to those election results on May the 8th. Next, a quick overnight stop in Stockport in Greater Manchester. Interesting because it's somewhere the Lib Dems are hoping to take control. In recent years, the Lib Dems have made all of their gains after their near wipeout after the coalition in southern England and what you might call traditional Conservative shires. Stockport, though, has remained a foothold for them, and this time they have hopes of making gains against the Labour Party, which would give them overall control.
Well, this is very exciting. We are arriving into Gateshead by crossing the Tyne Bridge.
And I can't come to the northeast of England without coming to the Angel of the North. Well, this is day 3 of my tour going right across the country around the poles in 80 hours. I'm at Beamish, the Living Museum of the North. I have managed to tick off more modes of transport. I've been on a horse, or at least a carousel horse. I've sat in the driving seat of an old bus. I found a penny farthing, but I didn't get on it. The whole thing looks slightly terrifying. And of course, we've been talking about the politics in the northeast, Gateshead in particular, where the Labour Party has dominated for years, but Reform are looking to make gains. And that's been the sort of message throughout this week, really. Now, obviously, during local elections, transport infrastructure is a very important issue for lots of people. So where better to discuss that than on some dodgems with Richard Moss, the actual BBC political editor for the North East.
Well, the problem in Gateshead has been a flyover that was the main link between Gateshead and Newcastle. But at the end of 2024, they discovered it was falling down. At one stage, it stopped the Tyne and Wear Metro as well. You could look at it two ways. On one way, it sums up austerity for councils. Gateshead Council couldn't do anything about it for many years, couldn't afford to. Asked governments for money to do something about it, didn't get anywhere. But you could also see it as being also a sign, I'm sure the opposition would, of kind of neglect of Gateshead's infrastructure. There were some checks, I think, that the council had failed to do as regularly as perhaps they should have done.
So I'm in England, and now I'm in Scotland. The seatbelt on. We're going up a nice steep hill. It's absolutely glorious weather. Right, here we go. Right up over the brow, round the first bend. Whoa! It's a bit twisty. Whoa! To the right, to the left, very big turn. Whew, a lot of fun. Well, this is day 4 of my tour around the polls in 80 hours. I am outside the Scottish Parliament building, and I suppose as my tour comes to an end, I've reflected a bit on the conversations I've been having. Nobody really knows what's going to happen. We can feel that voters are scattering across the political spectrum. Who is in power here in Edinburgh, in the Welsh Senedd, in council halls across England? It's going to matter to the people who live there because of the decisions they make, but it could also have a massive impact on our national politics too. And questions may be asked about any number of party leaders depending on how they get on. And in the end, that's what makes politics so interesting. Not knowing the outcome, waiting for those votes to be cast in the ballot. So as I end my journey after 80 hours, it's just quite exciting to have to wait and see what's going to happen on May the 7th.